everyone for joining our session today. This is called Unlocking Student Success, Course Design for All Learners. I am so pleased to have worked with Robert J. Dantzler, Adjunct Professor of the Interdisciplinary General Education, or IGED program. So thank you so much, Professor Dantzler, for leading this today. And with that, I'll hand over the controls to you. Thank you, Professor.
All right, so good morning to everyone in attendance, and thank you, Mr. Cerna. Thank you so much again. Thank you to the C.A.L department here at UDC for all these opportunities to collaborate, engage, and just become a better instructor and a better person overall. And so thank you all for this opportunity. So we're going to jump right into it. Today, again, we're talking about unlocking student success, course design for all learners. And very simple, there are just a couple things that I wanted to, or just goals that I want to work towards and hopefully accomplish today. Well, not necessarily just limited to today, but give folks something to think about going forward. So I want to invite instructors to think about, with intention, when you design a course, intention of what it is that you're trying to achieve and do. And also to determine what considerations are necessary to achieve student success. So just very simple, that's what we're doing today. And so the next part, we're going to look at our agenda. So we're going to first look at what is student success, a few working definitions that I came up with, designing your course with the end in mind, student learning styles, syllabus, setup, my personal teaching philosophy, and my encouragement for you all to get engaged with C.A.L if you aren't already. C.A.L is everything, and you need to get involved with the good folks over in building 6250, 4250, I'm sorry.
4250, 71.
71.
There you go, 71.
Yeah. My numbers were getting across, but thank you.
You got it, yeah. Right next to Starbucks, building 71 on the Van Ness campus, you'll find us. Sixth floor.
Exactly. Get some coffee and go right up to the 6th floor. There you go.
Perfect. It's set for the day. I love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So let's just jump right into this. So first up, okay, do that again.
And if you'd like, I can progress it for you, Professor.
Yes, that's fine. Yes, because my computer is not cooperating.
No
fully.
problem. So what is student success?
Yeah, so student success. Right before I get into this definition, student success has been for the past several years like one of these big buzzwords, especially in higher education, because we have our different parts that we look at so far as academic success, as well as just the general welfare, the general being of our college students. And in a lot of cases, these things have been operating separately. So this term called student success has been looking to say, let's look at student affairs and academic affairs, and let's marry these two things or cause these things to come together, because generally, well, not generally, but actually, these are what our students deal with, the things with, their co-curricular activities and then their academic activities. We want to look at making holistic people as opposed to just someone who is just either academics and co-curricular, or one or the other, and maybe a few that are both, but it's a whole experience for everyone. So this first definition, or working definition, because there are a lot of different ways that this is defined depending on what school you're attending and things like that. So it says it's a measure of student engagement and positive outcomes in higher education. The term typically refers to first generation and most historically marginalized students. And a note is that these groups drop out at higher rates and have greater need for institutional support. And this is from Brian Soika, who is with the University of Southern California Roger School of Education. And another definition, which comes from the Nazareth University in Rochester, New York, says that it's how well students are prepared to accomplish their current and future academic, personal, and professional goals through the development of knowledge, a sense of responsibility and self-reliance, and the connection to the college and wider community. Here at the University of the District of Columbia, from the actual, from what is provided by the Chief Student Development and Success Officer, is that leadership and development in the following comprehensive co-curricular areas, such as student life and services, including student clubs and organizations, counseling and career services, testing and assessment, community outreach and involvement, judicial affairs, record management, ID services, financial aid, health services, student employment, and student support and trio pre-college programs. So here you see what's happening here is that UDC, we're spelling it out a little bit more, as opposed to just, a general definition, but spelling out like some of these things of what that could be, because, we look at the umbrella terms, academic affairs, student affairs, but what are we talking about specifically? And so we're, again, dealing with the student, the wholeness of the holistic piece of the student, as opposed to saying separate individuals, okay? And also bringing attention to the part where it says the pre-college programs, because this is actually a process, when you think about also the preparation of, when students get ready to enroll in college, student success, all of these things, okay? All right, next slide, please. So when I think about my course design, or one of the things that I think that's helpful is I think about the end in mind. When I say the end in mind, I look at where we want to be. All right. What I desire to get students to achieve. And obviously the word that we're using, the buzzword we're using, success. And success in most cases looks like, completion of the course with not just only a passing grade, but also understanding of what the objectives of the course are and how you can apply those things in your everyday life. Again, not just what you can get out of this textbook or what you get from your professor's slideshows and lectures and everything like that, which of course are important, but also how can you apply this to your everyday life? Okay, and then so another question I ask myself, and I encourage you all to ask, what is your plan to do that? So your plan, it begins as you start to develop, and in the next slide, I actually go into that a little bit more. So your plan is, what are all the contents that you are going to include in the course? And usually we have a centralized point of that. Also, I want to point out, and this is what we're talking about, the early, the upfront considerations, your student learning styles, getting into what I like to call the DEI of how students process information and what works best for them individually. So, like when I was in my early years in teaching, one of the things that we were encouraged to look at was like, what type of learners do you have? You have your audio, you have your visual, you have your kinesthetic, some may be a combination, and you have all of that in place. And we have to be able to communicate and do different types of things in order for them to learn, in order for them to process the information, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to say this, you hear it, you memorize it, you regurgitate it, or you see it, regurgitate it. But how can we, keep it in mind, what can we do to cater to all of these things? Now, again, it's an upfront consideration, yet at the same time, there's a lot of monitoring and adjusting that has to happen, because, if your experience has been anything like mine, every class, every semester, every term or whatever, you come up with something that you never saw before. So always being open. Absolutely.
Yeah, and with that point, Professor, how do you adapt your teaching style to better suit the needs of different learners? Like, can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, one of the things I would say, meeting students where they are. And what that looks like is, a lot of my students like to watch YouTube. So I'll find a YouTube video, or I'll make a reference to something on Instagram or TikTok, where they are, if I can find it, because I haven't mastered that thing of how I can pull up an actual TikTok through my TikTok account. Because yeah, I do TikTok
Mhm.
a little, but
Perfect.
if I could find the like a YouTube video of it, or if I, and typically sometimes what happens is, I'll say something, some student catches what I'm talking about, that student will pull it up on their phone and they'll pass it around. And I'm okay with them passing it around. So, everybody's together and things like that. And I point out the fact that I'm okay with that because I used to be one of, put those phones away in class. But, that's where they are, they're using their phones, they're using their tablets and their computers. And so, if that's what's helping them to learn, who am I to stand in the way of that, because I have an idea of what I want happen in the classroom. And, well, part of it, I was like, don't shop while you're in class. But I'm like, again, if you shop in class, that's on you,
Yeah.
but but still, when it comes time for the, assessments or whatever, just remember we talked about this while you were shopping. So yeah. So yeah,
No, and
that's
I love that. It's so true because you do have to meet the students where they are.
absolutely.
And, students also learn with like bite-sized pieces of information. Even with me, when on TikTok, I've learned so many useful skills, like let's say for Excel or
Mhm.
Outlook that are 30 seconds or less. But
Yeah,
those are how our students learn.
right. And thank you again for saying that. And I just want to just tag onto that, the fact that when I'm looking for something, whether it's, it's been something like I had to try to do something with my car or something, or if I wanted to assemble something, and I'm not the DIY guy, but there are times when I'm like, okay, I have this and I don't necessarily have the cash right now to pay somebody. So but I look for that 2-minute YouTube clip,
Hmm.
because you have some people that have like those 30-minute, and I'm just like, I want to, and yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. And
All
thank you
right.
for that example. I like the example of TikTok, YouTube, those bite-sized learning pieces. Really
Absolutely.
great way to meet with our students.
Absolutely. All right. So when I was talking about the end in mind, this is what I'm pretty much talking about. And everything for me, it starts with the syllabus. And with the syllabus, these are like what I would consider like the most important things to have in your syllabus. Of course, you want to have your course description, which is applied, by, not applied, supplied, excuse me, by the university. Just a quick, simple copy and paste. Sometimes you may have to change the font or something, when you put it into the syllabus, excuse me, but that description. And this is also important to go over, because what I've also found that there are sometimes students who are signed up for class, especially when we're talking about general ed. And I used to ask this question on the first day: what is it that you hope to learn from this course? And of course, there's some students who can give me an answer, something that either they genuinely feel, or something that they make up that they think that's going to impress me and make me blush. And and I'm okay with that to an extent, the blush part. But then there also are those who have no idea. They would say, my advisor told me I have to take this class. It's on my curriculum, but I don't know what this class is about. So hey, that's what we do. Rather than saying, you sign up for class, you should know what it's supposed to be and blah blah. Still, we go over that description, telling you what it is. Here also at UDC, when I actually came aboard as an adjunct in 2017, I was, told about, we do a lot of theme-based type teaching. And so when I say theme-based, it's like, is there some type of phrase or something that we can make a connection to this, that, it kind of looks, what we're doing throughout the semester. So for example, one of the classes that I teach a lot is discovery diversity. And one of the shows that I like I absolutely love, and I watch it, like I binge watch it, or one episode at a time, just depending, because sometimes I need to decompress after every episode, is Law and Order SVU. Love that show. And it's a show where they do a lot of investigation. So when we're talking about diversity and coming from the angle of looking at our biases, we are actually doing an investigation. So there was one for a few semesters, I actually used that theme. I said law and order. I believe I said something like special discovery unit, or a special diversity unit, or something. It was I tied it, I can't remember the exact way, but I did that. And saying that we're investigating the way that we see and view the world, in comparison to what really is. because a lot of times our biases form on how we see things, and we don't make a lot of space for other perspectives and other considerations. So I did that. More recently, I used the question, my theme, I built from a theme of do you know your mind? And it's something that after every unit or every class, even I ask that question, do you know your mind? What's going on in your mind, the ways that you think, the way that you see the world? Do you know why you think that way? Asking those questions. And so I kind of just build upon that. Those are just a couple examples, and I've did some other things in some other courses. Then we also have our student learning outcomes, which are what we talk about, the SLOs. And these are those objectives that we want to make sure that we accomplish. And jump into that last bullet, then I come back to the next one. I should have put them in that different, but it's okay. So what the learning outcomes, that's what I use to build my assessments. And in a class like diversity, I use a lot of reflections as opposed to exams and quizzes and things like that, because I want to challenge my students to think deeper, as opposed to, oh, I remember this definition or I remember this example, but no, how is this applicable to my life? And so every assignment that I, create or have my students do, I want to make sure that it has a purpose that's connected to the course, and as well as it's aligned with the student learning outcomes. And ultimately, again, hitting on the part of how does this and how will this look outside of UDC. And then the course calendar, is always helpful for students to see like when assignments are due, the long term, as opposed to just assigning, you do something and, on Monday, then you assign it and it's due on Friday. Well, they can look at the syllabus early and can plan out. And that's, again, catering to those different learning styles, because there are some students that, okay, you told me today, I got it. But then there are some people, they're very structured and strategic. So we have all those different types. So that's another example for you, Mr. Cerna, of, that DEI of the student success or the learning process, so to speak. All right.
And I have a question. Do you incorporate student feedback and input into revising or updating your syllabus?
Yes, I do. Because I'll admit, and when I'm saying this, I also want to share my growth, because at first, I would say certain things like, I try to be clear, I explained it, but sometimes they just, they miss it. So they was like, oh, I thought it was this, or this, like I said, creating an assignment. And so what I would do is I would take, that, so either for an upcoming assignment or for another semester, I would say, let me word this differently so that they can understand it. Or even I took into something in consideration when when I assigned them into cooperative groups. So we in our cooperative groups, this is also a preparation. It's a multi-level type thing what we're doing. So first, they're placed in groups. Say like, give them that experience of saying like, sometimes you don't get to choose who you want to work with, and you get to learn more about yourself as well as learn about others in this process. And it's also preparing them for the capstone that they have to take at the end of the IJED curriculum. And which is a class that I recently started teaching as well, the capstone, because one of the things I tell them, I say, in the workforce today, and even when you go to grad school, a question is asked, how well do you work with other people? And we're giving them that experience that's preparing them so that, well, one, don't walk away from UDC saying they never told me this, but, give you that, see what it's like, so that you will know how to make the necessary adjustments at that point in your life. Learn more about yourself and, the world around you, so to speak. Even if it's just working with people from different neighborhoods in the same city, you're not all the same. So how are we going to do these things differently?
Yeah, very well said. And with that, I just want to take a brief pause. If there are any questions from the participants today, feel free to go ahead and unmute or type in the chat box. But I do have another question if we don't have any.
Sure.
So Professor, how do you ensure that students are aware of the relevance and importance of the student learning outcomes outlined in the syllabus?
So okay, Give me that question again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so how do you ensure that students are aware of the relevance and importance of the SLOs outlined in the syllabus?
Yeah, I mean, so of course, like I say, I go over it and just say
Mm-hmm.
that. And when I make it relevant by pointing back to it, so to speak,
Yep.
when we have our class discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And because up front, so it's like I have what I do in my syllabus, and is I have them but in like that, say that day one PowerPoint
Mm-hmm.
that I go over, I paraphrase them, and so that for that diversity, there are 4 different learning outcomes. And so I kind of like just paraphrase them into a paragraph and tell them this is what we're trying to do. And as we have our discussions and we do our different activities, whether they do small groups and things like this, I keep pointing back and say, remember, this class is about becoming aware of our cultural competencies or our biases and things like that. And it kind of, and I love those moments when I say things like that and they kind of just pause and I could just see them thinking, the stuff going, their eyes are wandering and they're just, trying to get that right answer, or,
Mm-hmm.
or even someone say, wow, you you made me think about something, like, or you stepped on my toes. And when they tell me that, I'm like, yes. So it's always for me the point back, so to speak.
Yeah, excellent. And I do like that you also connect every assignment with those SLOs so they know the purpose of that specific assignment.
Right.
Yep.
And that was something I actually grew into.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to credit that to Dr. Win Yarbrough and Dr. Kim Cruz, because like when we started to do the common assessments,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I started looking at my, and we saw what we were trying to achieve with the common assessments. And for those who aren't aware, in the general ed courses, we have a common assessment, for student, it shows how students learned in the class, not necessarily say that they mastered it, so to speak, or, we're looking at what did they learn and how did this class help them reach the objectives through a centralized something, whether it's like a reflection or a presentation or something like that. And so we when we started doing that, and I looked at it, I said, okay, what assignments can I point to that can help them write this final reflection? And then I said, whoa, so I started looking at some assignments and I was like, this doesn't fit. It was a nice activity to do, but is it really helping them? So that, because I didn't want to have them in a place where they were set up, whereas, I did all this instruction, they did all these assignments and they got all this feedback, but then they got to this final assessment and they're like, what, why didn't we talk about this the entire time? So and I'll say that's how I got into it, making I was more intentional with
Mm-hmm.
every assignment. Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor.
Mhm. And so when we set up, and so the reason for this particular piece, when we talk about setup, we want to look at, of course, our modality. Whether we're teaching face-to-face, high flex, online, whether it be synchronous or asynchronous, how are we going to set up our class in a way that, regardless how we're teaching, we can still keep students engaged with what we're doing, or what's happening in the course. And I didn't pay attention to what I was doing, so to speak. When I say what I was doing, or how it could be so relevant, until I have to shout out Fatma for this, for telling me. She said, I like the way you have your course set up, where you can follow it whether you're in face-to-face or on high flex or online. And I kind of looked at it, I said, wow, I said, I kind of do have it set up that way, where no matter which way I'm instructing the class, that they can follow along and keep up, whether they're in class or whether they have to miss class because of illness or a personal reason, or if they're athlete traveling with their respective teams, or whatever the case may be, they can still follow along with that. And so you have to also consider what is your learning management system. I encourage heavily, if folks are not using Blackboard, and that's which one that we use here at UDC, I highly encourage that use Blackboard, and that you go to the C.A.L site or contact C.A.L and ask them, take advantage of those trainings of how to engage. I know I forgot his name, is it King, Julian King, I believe, he does a
Yep.
great workshop on, making an effective, your grade book and things like that, because we definitely want to always make sure that we have that grade book up to par, because students need to know where they stand. And so, there are so many tools that, we can use. And, I know that some people do the email, and I personally don't do the email insofar as submitting assignments, because I get enough emails in my inbox, and I tell my students this, and Blackboard is a way to track it, to say that, hey, this is proof that you submitted that assignment. Or I can always point them back to Blackboard for the instructions, because, I could, like I emailed those out on January 15th. Okay, well, I deleted. So can you send it again? And so rather than me getting frustrated, or, I'm like, hey, it's right there in Blackboard, go to that and you'll find it there. Okay. And so, yeah, I encourage people just do that rather than the email. Email is helpful, but, there's so much that can happen with email. And so now the question at the bottom, that's something I'm actually posing to all instructors. When you choose your format, and that's actually the way that you set up your course, why did you set your course up the way that you did, with the intentionality and stuff. So actually with that, oh yeah, and as you can see, the contact information to connect with the C.A.L team and professional development opportunities are in the chat. So getting to it. So now I want to show you a little bit of how I set mine up and explain why I set mine up that way in Blackboard.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. And
Absolutely.
as Professor Dantzler messaged, I did put the resources in the chat box for you. So we have our general email. It's calhelpdesk@udc.edu. You can also check out our professional development resources, as well as our Blackboard Ultra resources on our website.
Yes, it's a lot of stuff. And I mean, it's almost like everything that you need right there. It's like, that file cabinet where you could just go in the cabinet and thumb through or whatever. Yeah, go there.
Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let me see, which one do I want to start with? Actually, it'll probably show both. And I'll explain why I said that in just a moment. This actually feels like a class sometime. So
Excellent.
so what this is how I set up. And as you see, this says fall 22, because there's something that I wanted to point out from fall 22 that I didn't have for spring 2023. So okay, so in Blackboard, it comes with a shell pretty much of what you can use, and and of course it's up to you whether or not you want to use it. But I found this helpful. So you have the resources. This is that first block here, and where students could come in here and we want them to look at these things. There's a video here, and there's some instructions about how to use Blackboard Ultra. And some different things here that they can go to, as well as the policies, the services and policies that are offered. And, we want to always direct students there. And, you see, like right here, you can just go into this, open things up, and it tells all this stuff and directs you to the links in the website where you can get these different services. And I also duplicate and put these things as well in, or make these references in the course syllabus. So that's that part. But this is where I get into it, where it says start here. So when you click on start here, this, you start off with welcome and the course overview. So under here, this is where I will put the course description, even though it's in the syllabus. Sometimes with certain things, you can't, you can list it as many times as you want, so to speak. It's like you can never have it enough. You just want to make sure you have it like in multiple places, or at least that's what I'm doing, or that's what I'm aiming for. The course description as well as the prerequisites, for taking the course. And the reason that we're pointing out the prerequisites, of course, is saying that these are those skills that will help you be successful in this course because of the components or the objectives that you get. So like, for instance, here you have IGED 130, which is the introduction to oral communication. Well, there's a part where students have to do presentations. So we're doing the presentations. You already know what's expected because you've taken that class. You've already, you know how to present, what to do and not to do when preparing a PowerPoint, and how to posture yourself when you're presenting. And IGE 210, which is a class that I've also taught, discovery writing, which actually gets into the actual research process, how to research and use the proper sources or find resources for your presentation. And then down here, it says objectives, which are our learning outcomes. And, we have those things, okay? And then from there, I have the course syllabus. And actually, this is okay, I know what happened just now. Okay, but we're going to keep going like it didn't happen. And again, this is what my syllabus looks like, like any syllabus, like, you have all of the information about where you meet, what time you meet, my office hours, the term and the course registration number. That's always important, especially when you have to, say maybe email another advisor or someone about these things. You see your learning outcomes, those things that we just saw here. When I talked about earlier about the theme, when I said, do you know your mind? Let's take a journey. And, I explained what it is that we're doing there. Your required readings, additional resources, the methodology that we use in the course, your grading criteria. Always, I try to be as thorough as possible with this so students know how they're graded, so they'll understand why you got this grade, especially when it comes to attendance and participation. And I tell my students, I know you have things going on, but I still need you to be responsible about being in class and being in class on time. You want to get, it's like I say, attendance and participation is one of the easiest grades to get. So get those points, but if you don't get them, it can also impact you very heavily. So get the class on time. So yeah, I have all these things, spell them out. And, these are our university policies. And then, some more things about classroom decorum, making sure, again, and, I know these things are listed in the student handbook, but sometimes, the student handbook could be a little overwhelming. And when I say that, meaning that, it could be a lot to just get to some things. So, just pull from that and put it here. Then, of course, point out, saying this is where you can also find this because, in case we need to make a reference. And this is that course calendar that I talked about. And so, and Mr. Cerner, this actually will also kind of answer your question again. So each week, I have it spelled out of what we'll be doing now. And I do have the disclaimer that I got before, that the syllabus is subject to change. The course, because sometimes we get into a conversation and sometimes I may need to spend a little more time explaining a concept. And if that's the case, then hey, we may run over. It may throw us off track with the schedule, but we'll be okay. And also crediting Dr. Winyarborough again, he said, let's be concerned with making sure that they understand the concepts as opposed to rushing through to make sure that we, we stayed on pace and we covered the entire book. Well, things, if we don't get through the entire book, did we get enough that they understand the concepts? And I actually like that. I was actually doing that before. So when he said that, that kind of just made me feel like it was okay. I had no more regret about not covering the entire book. So yeah. But if you see over in the far right column where I have the student learning outcomes, what that tells the students is these are with these particular assignments for this week, these are the objectives or the outcomes, the learning outcomes that we're covering. And so, so if the question comes up, like, did you cover this? Yeah, we did that when we did this particular assignment. When we did this reflection, that's what we did. And so that's pretty much, my course syllabus. There was something else that, like, I thought I had the right, but hey, I can do this. It's okay. The right one open. This is what I didn't get to do this semester, but I still have time. It's still early, and I think my students will forgive me. When we go on to start here, and in the welcome and overview portion, let me scroll. There we go. I'll put in a video. So in this area up here, this area, it's not showing right there. It is. It's coming up. But that's a video where I kind of welcome the students so they can take a look at it before day one, or if they have questions, say, now what's this class about? I said, well, go back to the start here menu and you look at that video and look at that that course overview, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what we're doing here. And so this is a welcome, this, it's kind of like also like a little taste of my personality, so that to kind of get them relaxed, because I recently started doing this, even though we were encouraged to do this like when we first did. Well, I need to stop telling on myself so much. Okay. But I started doing this because for those students who come to class with the apprehension, like, is he mean? Is he a tough professor? Does he give a lot of work or whatever? And so they get like a little taste of my personality, and then throughout the semester, see that this is who I am all the time. I'm just not nice on day one and turn into someone else. No, this is me throughout. And so the other piece, and I actually will use this one. So I set up my course. I add these folders. Okay, let me close that. I set up these different folders here. Okay, here we go. I know what I did. Do that. I tapped it too many times. Okay, here we go. These folders are all of the categories of the different assignments that we have in throughout the semester. And I set mine up for this, up this way, because in the previous Blackboard, it was a specific tab for assignments. And that was fine and everything. But what also would happen is students would all have to go to a different tab for instruction. So it created a lot of back and forth. And so what I tried to do here is for each particular category, so like we have the short response reflections, we have the end of unit reflections, we have the case studies and scenarios, the team and group work, is that every particular, say I'm going to use end of unit reflections, every particular assignment that is in the unit, and it's already specified in the syllabus, and I remind them in class, you'll find that here. So what you'll do is here they will see the guidelines for writing their reflections, as well as the rubric. And if there's another assignment, like say for instance, I gave them some options rather than saying, okay, you just do it this way. Like, let's see, instead of just writing, like say a summary and putting this stuff in here, can you write a reflection, or like write something like a creative story, so to speak, that in which you can identify those aspects of what we talked about, those concepts that we were talking about. Can you show that reflected in this, as opposed to just being so robotic all the times? Now some, they say it's easier just to write the summary where I have to identify this, and keep it moving. That's fine. But I'm trying to allow for creativity, but at the same time, making sure that the assignments are equivalent where when I'm grading them, that it's you're still getting the same thing, or they're being considered the same way, even though they're different formats. And then here in the folder, that same place where what you're going to do is you're going to submit all of your assignments under that particular category. And I know some professors do like week 1, week 2, and that's fine. But what happens, there's sometimes students say, what week are we on? or because our timing may get a little off, so I get a little adjusted. So what I just do is just use my different grading categories, and I set everything up like that. All the information, all the rubrics, the guidelines, everything in there. Here, there are the different readings, because this is something that's not in the textbook. We don't do just only textbook. And I've told my students, I'm not a line by line, page by page type thing, because again, we want to get into how is this applicable to your everyday life. And so that's how I set mine up, and I hope that makes sense. So want to take a pause for some questions, if anybody wants to ask some
Yeah,
questions.
and this is excellent. And what advice would you give to other instructors on really developing their course in Blackboard?
Yeah, so what I would say to any instructor, find out first what works for you that you can follow, of course, and then, but almost so even more importantly, being sure that you can explain that to your students so that they understand, what to do, because they're like, if I set this up, okay, we can see this, but, can I, help me make sense of this, as opposed to just assuming that they understand because it's there. I give them instructions like on day 1, this is how you will find your assignments, this is where you put them in. So yeah, be intentional, understand why you're doing it. What is your why? What is your reason for doing this? And be able to communicate that with your students. At the same time, being open to change if something works better. Because, some people may feel like, okay, I'm the professor and what I say goes. Cool. But, but are your students able to follow you? And so sometimes we do have to cater to help them, so.
Definitely. And I think, with the student preview option in the upper right corner, seeing it
Yes,
with the student's perspective, that can also
absolutely.
help. Yeah.
Yes, and so, for those who may not be familiar, yeah, that's something I do often. And I do this especially because like I want to make sure things are visible, because we've been in class at times, and I said, go to Blackboard and open this particular file, and it's like it's not there, and I'm like, I knew I put it there, and it was something simple as I didn't make it visible. And so I just go over here, and it's a very similar look, to my side of things. But, I do this to say, like, what is it that you're looking at? Even like when it comes to, oh gosh, I hope this is.
Yeah, this will be the student preview one. So it'll be you.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, hope I'm not putting anybody. Well, yeah, and so this says,
Yeah.
this is preview and it has it as Robert, but this
Okay.
could be an example of what happens, if you don't turn in your assignments, this is what happens. But since I wasn't required to turn in the assignments, this is why you see the zeros. And I have it set, and this is to help keep them on task. I have mine set up, whereas if you miss the due date, Blackboard automatically enters a 0.
Mhm.
And so this is to keep them. And so once they see that, some panic, and it was, I got a 0. I said, as soon as you turn it in, I'll grade it, and everything's okay. And they said, okay. And so, and then I even have to tell them, I said, Blackboard is like, so like the old Blackboard, when we used to put end of the day, it would say 11:59 p.m. I still do that to that, because, you still have some students who are used to that system who are still here. So I still keep it that way at 11:59. And sometimes that when we say midnight, that kind of, they're like, was that midnight Wednesday or midnight Thursday? So I just keep it at 11:59 p.m. But I make sure that they know Blackboard clocks 11:59 and 3 seconds as late. Just saying. But I'll excuse them on that. I'm like, I'm not gonna be that petty. So I'll allow for it. So yeah. Okay, wait a minute. So I have to slide this over, discard, and yeah. So yeah, that's how I pretty much have my Blackboard set up.
Excellent, Professor. And I'll go ahead and reshare the presentation so we can talk about
Okay.
your teaching philosophy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So my teaching philosophy, and this is something that I have to constantly revisit, because our times change. We don't always have the same type of students. And sometimes it could be adjusted. And one of the things I try to do is make sure that what I believe in aligns with the institution where I'm employed and that I work in, where I serve, that I'm in alignment with that. Alignment, that's something that's one of those buzzwords in my personal life, being on the same page. And so just starting off, it says, I believe it is important to create and provide a safe space or environment that is inclusive and equitable to diverse learners. Teachers should help students realize that they have a voice and are free to use it, while being respectful and considerate of all others who have that same liberty. And it continues. It says, additionally, I believe teaching should deliver instruction that is rigorous and relevant to multiple experiences while provoking and invoking thought. Finally, teaching should cultivate student growth with a variety of assessments to monitor progress and the use of various types of technology. And just, hitting on a couple of these things, I've always felt that it was important for a student to realize that they have a voice. So often, or so many of us were trained in ways that we just sat in class, we just listened to instruction, we would record, regurgitate, and hopefully advance. Well, in that process, what's the way that we can accurately see how students are learning, along the way, these summative assessments, let them know it's okay for you to talk, share what you wish, and, setting the ground rules that, we're going to be respectful for one another's experiences. So like, for instance, diversity, um, we talk about culture, but I don't necessarily teach the cultural unit. I allow the students to do that because, I have students like a lot of students who say come from Jamaica or Ethiopia. That's where I've had a lot of students, and of course DC. I've lived in DC for almost 10 years, but I can't tell you everything about DC. I can watch documentaries on Jamaica and Ethiopia, but I can't tell you everything about that. There are people who have lived experiences, and we have to make space so that we can hear and learn and be open to these things rather than just relying on what we saw on TV or on the internet or on social media. And in this process, again, having things say rigorous, moving beyond basic, getting into, those higher order thinking skills according to Bloom's taxonomy, and, being reflective thinkers, and, engaging and everything like that. And as well as, making it relevant. Like, what is, again, that question of what does this look like in your world? What does this look like, where you're from? And even sometimes it's like there are some terms that people aren't aware of. So, example, there was a student who was from Saudi Arabia. He never heard of the word bias. And so I had to take time to explain that to him. And in that, he said, oh, okay. And then he was able to use his terminology of what was, applicable in his country to say, oh, that's kind of like, and I don't remember what it was that he said. And I said, yeah. And I just said, that's just another way of saying it, as opposed, just opposed to just taking what I say, so to speak, but making, space for all these things, these experiences. And so it's not just only a classroom, but it's a community. And that's what I try to set up and do with my teaching. And that's how I have come up with my philosophy on teaching.
Excellent. And I just had a question for you. Do you ever mentor new instructors on crafting or developing their teaching philosophy?
I actually have, typically say someone in the same department, again, just showing or sharing what I've used, whether it be syllabus or PowerPoint or something. So, and, say if you have questions, feel free to, ask. But, and still, encouraging them, like, say, shape this into your own thing. And so, yes, I have done, it's the informal mentoring. When I say informal mentoring, as in, like, I wasn't, designated as
Yeah.
the teacher mentor or whatever. But yeah, absolutely. Because, there have been those who have helped me.
Yeah.
And so, you got to pay it forward. You got to, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yep.
We got to keep helping one another. So yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor.
Absolutely.
So I'll briefly go over, I put those in the chat box as well. Our main email is calhelpdesk@udc.edu. Also our PD website, as well as our Blackboard Ultra resources. And I know that the professor also wanted to
Yes.
talk a little bit about CAL, but you are
Yes.
encouraged to contact us anytime.
Please do. Please contact CAL for all of the different, say, professional development opportunities. My first time was, and so it was my story with CAL has just been kind of here and there, over the years. I was thankful that in 2018, I actually did the online certification, just kind of like something to do, or to have, so to speak. And then not knowing what was coming 2 years later with COVID. And so while we had to jump into that, summer of 2020, the instructors who got to teach the summer courses were the ones who were already certified. Thankfully, I was already certified, because also I needed me a paycheck too. So, but thankfully I was certified through CAL, and and the program Quality Matters. I actually had an opportunity to teach, and then it was later required that we had to do these certifications. And then in return, there were some things that were updated. So that was also good. And so, and again, ways that you can engage your students, online or just using different types of technology. And then last summer, we got introduced to this VR stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, Cal, those are my best friends now. So, and with that, I've been, trying, every semester since then, I've been trying to get my students engaged with a virtual experience, a virtual reality experience. Again, just opening their minds and how to, and using different things, different ways to reach them, rather than just, lecturing and stuff like that. Yeah. So call
Excellent.
Cal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. And happy Valentine's Day.
So are there any questions from our group here? If not, I'll have Professor Dantzler, if you can give us some final thoughts before we conclude.
Oh, so final thought. Love what you do. Always remember why you're doing it. Remember that there is someone that is dependent on you, even on your worst day. So, always, show up when you now, and this is outside, of course, when you may have to take a break because of illness or personal or whatever. But when you show up, make sure that you show up fully, because somebody is dependent on you each time, and they may or may not say it. And, even if you just reach one person, you've done your job, you've done enough. So, show up with intentionality, with purpose. And if you ever feel discouraged, just always revisit your why. And just quick, like I have a philosophy of teaching. When I started grad school to work on my master's in education, we had to write a philosophy of education. And even in ministry, we've had to talk about, our purpose of what we want to do and things like that. When I feel discouraged, I always go back to those essays or those personal statements that I wrote. And I'm like, even though I'm mad in my feelings right now, this is bigger than me, because somebody today and tomorrow is dependent on what I have. So yeah.
Very well said. And, with that, Professor, it's been such a pleasure to work with you as always. I know we will be
Likewise.
integrating VR into your course. I'll also be doing a presentation in your class on Thursday,
Yes.
which I'm very excited about. But yes, thank you so much, Professor, for your time. This was a very engaging webinar. I'm sure everyone on the call really learned a lot from this session. So just a quick reminder, this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Please contact us, and I can also connect you with Professor Dantzler as well if you're watching this afterwards. But thank you again, Professor.
You're welcome.
Yep. And for everyone else here on the call, have a great rest of your day. Happy Valentine's Day, and we will see you very soon.
Very
Bye-bye,
soon.
everyone. Thank you.